could possibly believe that it was real.
People are captivated by Slender Man.
Throughout history, folklore has given a voice to our fears. I'm Aaron Mackey. This is Lore.
These kids are hurting someone!
Just like we did.
Quicker than the tallest fruit, fear the man, the Slender Man. For he can do what no one can.
Welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across several weeks. We are currently in the middle of exploring the evolution of folk horror, and this is part 13, in which we've moved right up to the present day. We will be exploring the online world of digital folk horror, and we are going to finish with a review of SLENDER Man from 2018. Now, we're going to try and keep everything in this episode spoiler free. However, we may reveal a few minor spoilers for Slender Man, so just be warned. We didn't think it was worth doing a whole spoiler section for that movie because, to be honest, there's not a whole lot to discuss, but we do talk about a couple of moments in the film and give away a few minor plot points, but to be honest, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Before we get started and I introduce my brand new guest, here are a few contact details. You can email us. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter @evolutionpod or on Facebook. That's facebook.com/evolutionofhorror. And you can also find us on Letterboxd. That's where we post what movies we cover on the podcast week by week, and also we'll post what movies are going to be coming up over the next few episodes. That way you can keep up to date. But let's get started. Lots to discuss this week. So joining me for the first time on this podcast, I needed a guest who kind of knew what he was talking about here, because this is kind of new territory for me. I'm not really up on my Slender Man, creepypasta, Marble Hornet type internet folklore. So I've got with me none other than the head of digital studios at BBC Studios, and he also happens to be a massive horror fan. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the podcast Alex Ayling. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to my cupboard. Is it as you imagined it?
I've been thinking about this cupboard for a long time, and it is exactly how I imagined it.
So, first of all, just for people who don't know anything about you, tell us a little bit about yourself, sort of what you do.
I'm not expecting anybody to know me at all, and that's totally fine. This is my podcast debut.
Yes.
So I'm super, super excited. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh.
Been listening to the podcast loads and super, super excited to be on it.
Amazing.
So, like, my day job, if you like, is I work for BBC Studios, and I make fun stuff for the internet. For like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the good social medias. I make videos, I make all the fun things that
very cool
people like to enjoy on the internet.
Yes, people these days, in fact, I'm always shocked actually that people do sit and listen to this podcast, which can be like 90 minutes long, because I just think most of the time now people want nice bite-sized internet-sized things, don't they?
But like, interesting, like, what is an internet-sized thing? We've started to upload 10-hour videos recently to our YouTube channel, and they've been doing brilliantly. So there's no such thing as internet-sized. Really.
I'd like to flag that with some of my employers who I do video work for, who are like, no, this can't be longer than 60 seconds.
Are you charging by the minute as well?
Yeah, I should. Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. So, what about horror then? What's your relationship like with the horror genre? Are you a fan?
Massive fan. I like all genre films, really, and horror especially. Yeah, I do. I love it. I don't know what my favourite kind of subgenre of horror is. I like to kind of dabble with different bits and pieces and different kinds of things, but yeah.
Amazing. What do you remember have you always been a lifelong fan? I mean, do you remember what film it was that kind of got you into horror, or what your first sort of horror experience was? So,
I remember my first horror experience, but I don't know what the film was, and maybe people on the podcast can help.
Oh, okay.
So I was much younger than I should have been, round a neighbour's house, and his parents were out, and we watched a video that they'd rented from Blockbuster or something. And all I remember about it was that it was set in a prison, and there were prisoners, and it was demonic or possessed or haunted in some way.
Right.
The floor got really hot, and one of the prisoner's trainers, the soles of his trainers, melted. And I've got the image of like the melting soul and all the like strands of plastic coming up, like burnt into my mind as the first horror imagery. And I think I remember like after about 20 minutes after that, we just turned it off, or I don't remember the rest because it was like super scary.
Oh my God.
So, but I have no idea. I can't remember what that film was.
That does not sound familiar to me either. Excellent. Well, if anyone knows what that is,
Yes,
tweet
please.
us, let us know right
That
in.
will be like a 20-year mystery that you would be able to longer, like a mystery you'll be able to solve for me. So that was my first one.
Yeah.
And then like I guess we were one of the first people on my street to get cable, and sorry, Mum and Dad, if you're listening. Like I knew how to work the cable box better than they did, and also the timer on the video. So I was able to set the video to timer and set the cable box to switch channels and record things onto video that I could then watch later. And that was then my way in. So my prized possession at the time, and I don't still have it, unfortunately, was recorded from a TV channel called Bravo that no longer exists. And it was a VHS, and it had all the idents and the adverts in it, and it was Evil Dead 2. And then in brackets it said perfect for sleepovers.
There you go.
And it was the film I always showed to people when they stayed over, and that was the thing that like, and I think I underestimate how much that has like affected my aesthetic and affected my brain over the years.
What a brilliant film.
Yeah.
So good.
It's one of my
great.
faves.
So much fun as well, especially when you're a teenager with sleepovers, that kind of thing. It's just the best.
It's got everything now.
It's got everything.
It's got literally everything.
Yeah.
I still love it.
It's
I still
amazing.
love it.
God, Bravo. What a great channel that was. I remember, as like a teenager, that basically had horror films and then kind of smut, basically.
Yep.
That was everything you needed at that age. Bravo.
And then, weirdly, I then eventually went on to go and work on that channel.
Did
work
you?
in that family of channels.
No,
Yeah. So
amazing.
Bravo, Trouble, Living TV, all of those channels were places where I worked. Yeah.
Amazing. So we've been talking, as you're probably aware, for what feels like about 50 weeks about folk horror.
Loved every week.
Thanks. It's a weird, like very diverse subgenre. What? First of all, I mean, how would you personally define folk horror? I mean, when you think of folk horror, what sort of thing do you think of?
Okay, so I've been listening to the podcast. I've listened to every episode, and I feel like it's really difficult to expand upon the definitions that people have already given of what folk horror is. So I was trying to think of a way that I could add to it, and something I don't think people have spoken about yet. And for me, the thing that I think is kind of key is the arrogance of the protagonist coming into a world where they don't understand like the depth of the tradition and the power, and whether it's supernatural or whether it is people's traditions, or whether it's ambiguous. There's something about those people, and I was trying to think about who those people are, but they could be urbane coming into the countryside. They could be the arrogance of youth, but equally it could be like in Blood on Satan's Claw. It could be rebelling against young people, like whoever it is that's coming in and they think they know better. Like in Wicker Man, that's exactly it, right? It's like, I think I know better. You guys are all breaking the law. These are the law. This is God's law, and you're breaking it. And that wasn't my Edward Woodward impression.
It was
by
very
the way.
good.
Thanks. So I think there's something around. That, and then the other part of it, I think, is around what they're coming into is this kind of shared by somebody, not by them, but like shared stories. And those stories, where have they come from? We've been telling stories in the same way for at least 10,000 years now. Like from cave paintings right through to now, like the archetype of how you tell a story hasn't really changed. And I think the power is in the telling. The power is in the telling of the story and the sharing of the story, or the knowledge of what that story is. And that's why in a lot of these films you'll see invocations through like saying certain words or doing certain things or crossing a threshold or breaking a twig or
that's it,
or disrespecting something that you don't understand. And for me, like I think it's the arrogance.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could think of that people haven't spoken about.
Yeah,
yet.
you're totally right. That's really true. And I think that's what also then... I had the same thought, and I think that was what spurred me to want to include movies that, you know, aren't traditional folk horror, but even things like those kind of Hicksploitation movies are fundamentally that. You know, Eden Lake, all those types of movies are these arrogant protagonists underestimating what they're stumbling into.
I mean, Eden Lake, nobody covers themselves in glory.
No.
In that film.
No one comes off too well.
No one comes off well in that film.
Same with, you know, movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or any of those, you know, it's all just... bad people clashing with bad people a lot of the time. It's not a great subgenre for humanity, I find. I feel like slashers have this real kind of moral good and bad to them, and ghost stories are often tinged with something quite optimistic in a weird way, because they're about, you know, I don't know, lost loved ones lingering on or whatever it might be.
Or warnings.
Whereas folk horror is a bit more just like we're all fucked and we're all terrible people in a godless world.
That's interesting. Like, is folk horror something that's beyond humanity? Like older than humanity, or adjacent, or something that you don't understand and you can't understand, and so therefore... you know, communities have built up stories and fables and tales to try and explain this thing.
To deal with it,
exactly, to just deal with it psychologically. And then you just sort of blasé walk in like, oh, I'm from London.
Exactly.
I know what I'm doing.
Exactly that. Okay, so, I mean, again, what we're talking about this week is quite exciting because we've not really done anything along these lines yet. We've kind of dabbled with other mediums like television, a little bit of theatre, but this week we're kind of going into the World Wide Web. I sound like such an old man saying that, but that is kind of what we're doing. We're going into the digital world, I suppose. Just briefly, as like an intro, then, because I remember us talking about this together when we were talking about, you know, you being on the podcast and doing folk horror and stuff, and I think you suggested this as an interesting topic. Just like what is it that we're dealing with here? This kind of world of sort of, I suppose we'd call it online folk horror, I guess.
Sure. I mean, hopefully I'm not going to lose all your listeners at this point. But I think. I love the internet, mate. I'm super into it. I feel like in this, you know, in this analogy, you can think of the internet like the modern day campfire.
Yes,
and it's the place where you can share stories, and you can talk about things, and you can build a community, and you can pass on stories that you've heard, and like a campfire. If we were, instead of in a cupboard, you know, we were in the woods, whatever, I could say, oh, I had a friend and his uncle, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
That gives you enough of a distance that you don't know whether it's true or not. Like, it has just enough plausibility that that's what makes it scary.
Absolutely.
And I think the internet has that as well. Like, you can have an immediate conversation with somebody, but I don't know if you're, you know, Mike from London, or whether you're in, you know, Latvia or the deep south of America, or you could be anywhere, and talking about anything. And it's that sense of plausibility, but also like, how do you know? How do you know if this is real or not real?
Absolutely. I think that's it. Like, the internet is obviously the best thing ever, and it's something that we all rely on every day now, but there is something dark and dangerous about the internet, isn't there? That's the thing, and people are always droning on about that side of it as well, especially the sort of people on the more conservative side of things. But it's like, what are you exposing children to? Like you say, you could be talking to somebody who isn't at all who they are. You're giving out personal information about yourself that could, for all you know, go anywhere. You know, all of that side of it as well is, I suppose, it's kind of good fodder for horror as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one side of it completely, and the other side of it is almost the other end of the spectrum from like, people like you and me would probably be useless if you dropped us in the middle of the forest somewhere, and we wouldn't know what we were doing. Equally, if you put us in front of a computer and said, can you please fix this computer, or can you make internet happen from scratch, equally, I don't know what I'm doing.
No.
And so there's a certain kind of magic in the way that these things are delivered to us, and these ones and zeros are translated into moving images or text, and there's stories, and I guess it's almost like the same invocation, to go back to Evil Dead 2, like reading the Necronomicon.
Exactly.
And you're saying it out loud makes it happen. Like, who knows? Like, by sending something through the internet, and then you read something or say something, like, how do you know that's not having the same effect?
Totally.
And I don't know how the internet works.
No, and it's so interesting, and you're totally right with what you said earlier. It is the kind of natural evolution, I suppose, in that, we were scrawling ghost stories on cave walls, to then telling them around campfires, to then, Victorians writing them in books and novels, and then, TV, film, and now it's this. This is the next thing, isn't it? And it is, like you say, the perfect way to circulate stories and communicate stories, because you can talk to or pass something on to literally anyone in the world.
Yeah, but I think it has the potential to be even scarier, because there's some horrible stuff on the internet that's real, right?
Yeah.
So and there's horrible stuff that humans do that you could hear about at a campfire. The thing about television, like most television, and the thing about film, like most film, if it's delivered in a mainstream way, is that somebody has like compliance checked it. Somebody's produced it or written it or acted in it, and certainly nowadays you're not going to accidentally stumble across a snuff film.
No,
you might on the internet.
Exactly,
that's the thing, and it's that. Because the internet, you have no way of verifying information. I mean, and let's not even get into the future where, if you think photoshopping is scary, wait until Adobe release their software where you can type, all you need is 20-minute sample of my voice, which you will now have thanks to this podcast.
We've got it.
And you can type any sentence into this new piece of software and it will make it sound like I've already said it. And that's just on audio, and give it 5 years and you'll be able to do it for video as well. And at that point, like, not even fake news will be able to cover the distinction between reality, like truth and fiction.
Yeah,
we're going to have to, as a human population, come together to like figure out
a way to verify
and know these things.
God, that's really bleak. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Sorry.
Oh God.
Happy podcast.
Yeah, happy podcast, everybody.
Oh wait, for anybody who's playing Evolution of Horror Bingo, maybe that's the uncanny.
It is.
That's it. You don't know.
It is.
That's it. You don't know whether it's true or not. And,
no.
And there are some in the middle, and we'll talk about some of them later. There are some in the middle where it's like, this feels like it's probably scripted, but also like there's no indication. There's no IMDb credits. There's no
definitely
no one's claiming it.
Yeah. And there is that problem as well. Again, we're going to talk about later. There's some, real life stuff happens in relation to fictitious stuff on the internet because people, again, don't understand what's real, what isn't, what's fake. It's everything is so unreliable and therefore unsafe, I suppose.
Wow, this is a Debbie Downer.
Oh my God, I know.
I'm sorry.
I like it. I quite like getting nitty gritty. This is kind of sort of a little bit off topic, but just in terms of the internet in horror films as well, I think is an interesting kind of topic in terms of like, I feel like, and we're going to cover this a bit with Slender Man as well, is that this area isn't covered very well in cinema. And is it something that can only be covered online? So like, for example, you get movies like Unfriended, which was fine, but even that, it feels like a kind of gimmick that has already run out of steam. These kind of movies that are about, because it feels like a lot of horror filmmakers are trying to jump on this idea of like, well, the internet is scary. How do we make the internet scary in film? Do you think it's possible to make that work cinematically? Do
you know what is not cinematic? Is watching somebody typing into a search bar.
Exactly.
Or is watching somebody read something on the internet. That is not a cinematic image, and it's a visual medium.
Yeah.
And I'm yet to see someone who's pulled it off in a way that I think works. Like, I haven't seen Searching. I think that's a really interesting,
which apparently is very good
example.
Yes.
But then equally, like, watch it at home on your computer. At that point, don't go to the cinema.
Exactly.
Some of these things are meant to be consumed in the medium that they were created for. And that's why it's really hard to adapt some books for the screen.
Yeah.
And
unfilmable books, they call them.
Yeah, because that's not the medium it was created for.
Yeah.
And you look at like a really great film adaptation of a book, say, would be like, I love Lord of the Rings. I think they're great like adaptations, and what they did was like Tolkien purists hated them.
Right.
Like,
'cause
you
they
cut out my favourite character.
Yeah, because you've got to change it to make it suit the medium.
To suit the medium, exactly right. And the same is true of internet. Like, I think, the other thing as well is, like, the internet could be the death of horror movies. Like, the mobile phone could be the death of horror movies. Like, how many slashers recently have you've either got to be like, why aren't you calling the cops?
Yeah.
Why aren't you Googling this?
You've got to come up with a reason why there's no signal.
Or you've got to be like, oh, I dropped my phone.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no signal here. And all of that just feels a bit trite.
I think I think that's right. And I think what's happened is, to bring us back on brand, is that we've ended up with these kind of, instead looking back, you end up with people yearning for movies like The Witch, or movies that are 80s nostalgia fests like It Follows or The Guest, where it's like, we don't want to see people sitting on mobile phones and computers in order to... That's not what you want from horror cinema a lot of the time. Not cinema at least. I think we'd all rather just see witches in the woods or campfire stories, or, like old-fashioned horror come back, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think It Follows is a great example, because, like, when is that set?
Yeah, it's never clear, because at one point somebody has a Kindle type thing.
Yeah.
And yet it's clearly an 80s kind of...
Yeah, and you're just like, well, and actually, like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter,
It has no bearing on the story. It's only a thing if you make it a thing.
Exactly, and what happens is then that you don't find yourself questioning, why aren't they getting on the phone and calling somebody, or why are they not, blah, 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 blah. Because, that is a problem with horror, I think. I guess the closest thing to this kind of wave of mobile phone type stuff and internet type stuff is found footage in cinema, in a way, isn't it? That's kind of really the closest thing that filmmakers get to kind of bringing that real life internet-y thing to cinema.
I have got such a soft spot for found footage.
Yeah, well, it's what we're going to talk about later is basically found footage, isn't it? Yeah.
But I'm a real stickler for the rules.
Well, that's the problem with found footage, isn't it? Is that it's if it's not consistent, and if it doesn't make sense as found footage, then you could lose audiences straight away.
Yeah, well, not just that as well. I'm just a pedant. I'm just like, and who edited this?
Well, yes, that's the thing.
And there's some great examples of found footage, and then, like, there's an intro. I won't name the film. There's an intro where it's like, oh yeah, everything was going fine with this, and then we found this footage, and this is all filmed, and someone's edited it together. We found this footage, and it was too shocking to show. I'm like, well, and now you've edited it together in a film and put it in the cinema. Yeah, like, at least pretend. And then there was no ending of like, whoa, I told you. Yeah. That was creepy, wasn't it?
Exactly. And that's the one thing. That's the one thing with the internet stuff and with found footage stuff, is that whether it's real or not, I feel like it has to have the pretense of being real. Yeah. You can't be...
Commit to it.
Cinema can be as art house and surreal and as stylized as it wants. Whereas I feel like this stuff is... It has an obligation. That's the whole point of it, is that what you're seeing is genuine, and that's what's scary about it. Because otherwise you're just watching badly shot, crap, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, some of the contortions that people go to of like, oh, we've got a drone. Oh, we've got head cams.
I've got started on that Blair Witch film from a couple of years ago.
I've got my chest cams. We're like, don't forget to turn your camera on. Oh, do I have to? Like, all of that stuff. Like, I've kind of got a soft spot for... From a like professional storyteller point of view, like seeing people go through the kind of narrative, jumping through those hoops. Yes, I quite enjoy.
Yeah, and they've got to do it, otherwise people will go, why aren't they? Talking about why.
But like any good horror movie, at the beginning it lays down the rules, and then you have to follow the rules.
Exactly.
And then if you break the rules, you've betrayed the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not, and you take them out of it. Yeah, and it's laying down the rules can be as easy as. Like, I'm not going to do spoilers, but Hereditary is like, here's a film, you think you know what it's about. Half an hour in, oh, this film is not what you thought it was.
No, wonderful.
Oh, I love that movie. But it's like, oh, this is not what you thought it was. And there the rules are, there are no rules.
Yes,
this could be anything.
And again, as long as it's consistent in that rule breaking. Yeah, definitely. So what we're going to do, we've got kind of a few like sort of bits and bobs to cover. You knew this a lot more than me. This was a whole new world for me. Like, I had never in my life heard of the words creepypasta or Marble Hornets. I kind of knew about Slender Man, and that is it, basically. So this has been really exciting. Usually I'm the one kind of getting in touch with the guests saying, watch this, look up this. And you set me all this homework.
I'm sorry.
No, I loved it. It's been so much fun kind of discovering all this new stuff. And what's great is that it's all at literally at our fingertips.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is out there online to see. So we've got a nice mix of we've got some written word stories that you've kind of introduced me to, and then we've got this kind of it's I suppose you'd call it a web series, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I guess now you would. Yeah, that's what you'd call it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and then kind of various things that kind of have spun off from those, I suppose, as well. And then we'll finish by talking about the Slender Man film, because we've got to while we're here.
If we have to.
If we have to. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. So first of all, I want to ask you about creepypasta. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, what is creepypasta? It is in no way related to pasta.
So when you go in the cupboard and there's this fusilli and it's looking like a face and it's giving you a funny... No, it's not that.
Uncanny pasta, yeah.
So, honestly, like the internet. So creepypasta... the origin of the word creepypasta comes from a website that nobody should visit called 4chan, which is a horrible corner of the internet that nobody ever go there. So they had a way of sharing jokes, which was copy and pasting text. So it's like, this is a copy paste from somewhere else, and I'm just sharing it here. Copy paste, turned into copy pasta.
Aha, okay.
And so then some of these copy pastas were horror themed or were scary, and then there was they changed it from copy pasta to creepy pasta. So then creepypasta then became the name for these kind of shared campfire stories that would get posted on 4chan, but then really 4chan and Reddit are some of the places where memes are born.
Reddit is a dark corner of the internet.
Yeah, it has dark bits for sure, but Reddit is one of that's where memes are incubated, and that's where they come out. And if you ever see anything go viral, chances are it was on Reddit the day before. Right. So if you're a social media professional and you aren't checking Reddit for your latest memes, that's where you should be going.
Amazing, good to know.
This podcast is not sponsored by Reddit.
no, although I'm thinking it should be now. Okay.
So that's the origin of the word creepypasta, which is super weird.
Amazing. And so essentially then what it is it's a collection of scary stories that people all share, and people can add their own, and people spread around the world, I suppose.
And the thing that I love about them is that when they evolved to embrace the medium in which they were first shared.
Yes.
So they could pop up anywhere. And actually, a lot of them start life as an innocent-sounding post on a community and then play out in the replies to the comments, or they start as a video, and then there's some text on another website. And both of them are innocuous separately, but if you know about the things, it freaks you the fuck out.
Yeah.
And so there's, and the ones that are the most affecting are the ones that are rooted in that medium.
I agree.
And that are there for those things.
Yes, one of the ones you sent me, one of my favourite ones was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like you were looking at a conversation in a forum where somebody, and it was a classic conversation in a forum or a discussion group where somebody was saying, does anyone remember that 70s TV show where this
Candle Cove?
Candle Cove.
Yeah.
It was really good. And to begin with, because of the format of it, and the story looks like a thread, an internet thread, I was scrolling past it and I was going, where's the story? One of those annoying web pages that's got ads or different things on it, and I was just scrolling up and down trying to find where this story is.
Where's the text? Yeah.
And then I realised that was the text.
Yes.
And read down this forum, and it was really good. It really, and I won't give it away, but it gets creepier.
Oh, I've got shudders.
Creepier. Yeah.
Thinking about it.
Shudder-worthy kind of ending, but it was short and snappy and just worked. Again, could never in a million years work as a film or anything else, really, in terms of just that short story, I suppose.
Funny you say that. Candle Cove has been adapted into a TV show, which is really good.
Oh, but then I'm completely wrong. There you go. Well, I'm intrigued.
But it's different. It's the same conceit.
The seed of the idea.
The seed of the idea is the same conceit. I think you would lave it.
So is this... where can I find this?
That's Channel Zero. So that's Series 1 of Channel Zero is called Candle Cove.
You guys remember Candle Cove?
That show gave me the worst nightmares. We can make people do things.
It's not just a TV show.
Kids will see it.
These kids are hurting someone!
Just like we did.
I've heard so much good stuff about Channel Zero because I struggle with a lot of TV horror. I think, like, again, sometimes that kind of long form doesn't work that well with horror.
So I agree with you. And you look at like American Horror Story, it's always like twice as many episodes as it needs to be.
Always runs out of steam by halfway.
This is 6 half-hour episodes per season.
Great. That's
because it's like, I think it's like Canadian and cable, so they don't have as much budget, so they have a shorter run, which is perfect.
Yeah,
it's 6 half-hour episodes. There's I've only seen the first 2 seasons. So the first season's Candle Cove, the second season's called No End House, and the third season I think is called Butcher's Block, but I haven't seen it.
Which apparently is very good. I've heard.
Yeah, and that's got someone from It Follows in it.
Yes,
so Candle Cove, but the reason I think you would like it is it's properly Lynchian. Like the first one, the first series and the second series, there's a monster. It's not a spoiler. There's a monster in the first one which literally looks like it could have come out of the brain of David Lynch.
Great.
And there's in the second one, there's something that really reminded me of Twin Peaks: The Return.
Oh, I loved Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah, me too.
So excellent. So I've heard so much about Channel Zero, and I haven't. Can we get it in the UK?
So the first 2 seasons were on 5-star.
Oh, okay.
Random.
Very random.
Yeah, and I don't know.
If they're out
I looked
there.
for them. They were repeated fairly recently over the summer, but I don't know if they're going to be on again. Like, go to
There's probably some way.
Go to
find it,
justwatch.com if you want to find the legal way of watching them.
Yes, exactly.
Let's recommend legal way.
Very good. Very good. Well done. So Channel Zero then. So that's interesting. So already straight away we've got this creepypasta story that has already, and that was the direct inspiration.
So that's the conceit of Channel Zero is an anthology series, and each series is based on a creepypasta.
Ah, okay.
So the first one is based on Candle Cove. The second one is based on No End House, which is another famous creepypasta, and the third one is Butcher's Block, but that's based on something called like The Staircase in the Woods, or it's called something else.
Amazing.
But they're famous creepypasta.
Very cool.
Throughout history, folklore has given a voice to our fears. I'm Aaron Mankey. And this is lore.
There are also podcasts that kind of tell scary stories and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever listened to the podcast called Lore, Lore? Because that's a really popular one, apparently, isn't it?
Yeah, no, honestly, like my time is too busy spent listening to Evolution of Horror.
Oh, yeah, well, good to know.
But that's been adapted to Amazon Video.
Yes, exactly.
And I think, well, I don't know because I'm not a fan of either, but I've heard it's better in its original podcast format is what I've heard.
Yes, I have seen a bit of the Amazon TV show, and I would imagine the podcast is better.
Yeah,
but having watched the TV version,
but I like when you're not sure and things blend together. Like, how do you know this podcast isn't haunted? It isn't haunted. It isn't haunted. It isn't haunted. It isn't haunted. Now I'm really scared in this cupboard in the BFI. The door keeps rattling.
leave.
Who is it?
I know it is a. I mean, there's a lot. This is an old building, the BFI. We were just discussing this. There's some of the best sort of horror in history have been those things that kind of play with the form. Like, everyone talks about Ghost Watch from the early 90s.
Oh my goodness!
It has that kind of vibe, doesn't it? Again, the way that they used television, the medium.
I'm your proper, like, patient zero for Ghost Watch. My parents were out. And we had a babysitter, and we started watching it after it had started.
Yeah.
And then he turned it off before it finished.
I love it.
And then obviously the BBC never repeated it.
Nope.
And I was 10, I think, when it came out.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea that it was fiction.
Yeah.
That anything happened. It freaked me out. It haunted me for years. And I watched it again when you talked about it on the podcast. I watched it again. And honestly, it got me again.
It really is terrifying.
So good.
It's so good.
But you're right. That is taking the medium of a live entertainment show and presuming that's so ahead of its time.
It's super ahead of its time.
And then presuming that, and then, God, I love
twisting it. It's brilliant. And making it into a campfire ghost story, but in that medium. Kind of the same could be said for movies like Ringu, The Ring, you know, again, that kind of, and it's that idea of like passing on the videotape, passing on the tale.
I've just remembered. The first way I watched Ring was my friend, Tom, if you're listening, this is you, handed me a film, said, you should watch this film. And it was in a blank video in a white case.
The best way to watch it.
And I watched it and I was like, oh. Because it makes you complicit.
It makes
the film makes you complicit in it, and he handed it to me, and as it finished, the phone didn't ring. I'd love it if the phone had rung in my house after that, but it didn't. But I was just waiting for it.
Yeah, and there are some things like that, like Ghost Watch. I'm sure the best experience you could have had was watching it live on television. The best experience, I think,
maybe not as a 10-year-old.
Yes, exactly. The best experience you can get out of Ring is watching it on an old videotape that somebody's given you. You know, not in a cinema.
On VHS.
I think the same could be said with Blair Witch. I mean, I know the Blair Witch was, phenomenal in cinemas and, made a shit ton of money. But like, I watched it on video and I remember thinking, this is a great way to watch this grainy doc, on a small TV, analog TV.
I think you're right. I watched it in the cinema.
Yeah.
I was in the first wave of Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And, you just did a great episode on it, so I won't go into it in detail. But, like, honestly, I love that film.
No, it's incredible.
I love it.
And that's it. And
I came out of it with people and they were like, oh, what's the fuss about? And I was like, my eyes were haunted.
What?
I was like, did we just watch the same thing?
It's amazing how much it did divide people. But anyway, we've gone right
off topic again.
I just think it's interesting, and I think you're right about these types of things. That in their original form, at least, they have to be of this medium. They have to be of something that you see online, and especially stories like that one we were just talking about, Candle Cove.
Yeah,
the fact that it is in at least its original written form, it is laid out like an internet forum, makes it all the more chilling.
But it has to be, and you can tell that story again because, like, it's not a spoiler to say that there are multiple people that are contributing to the story, right?
Yes.
So there's an original poster where he says, I think it's a he or she says, or does anybody remember this TV show? And then people are commenting afterwards of like, oh yeah, I remember that, blah, blah, blah. And so that's where it starts.
Yeah.
And you need multiple point of view characters.
Yes.
And you can't do that in a book unless you're George R.R. Martin.
Yes.
And you like start a chapter with someone's name.
Yes, exactly.
But that's a whole chapter. Like this is a super short form way of having multiple point of view characters. You can do that on telly. You can do that in a film.
Yeah.
You can have multiple protagonists.
Yeah.
It's much harder to do that in the written form unless you write it like this.
Definitely. And do you still get, I mean, you said you got kind of chills thinking about it. Do you still, fundamentally, do these work for you then? Do you find them as scary as reading an old M.R. James novel or watching a great horror movie?
So, yes, and because I allow myself to.
Yeah.
It's like watching any horror. You have to have the suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
You absolutely have to. And then if the movie takes that away from you because it's badly plotted, like too badly plotted, or it breaks the rules, or it's just silly, or you're laughing in the wrong way, then
you're out of it.
You're out. But you have to go into these experiences with the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
And, I'm a voracious story consumer.
Right.
And I like any story told in any way, like however. And this is just another way of reading stories.
Yeah.
And like people are telling stories about their real lives all the time on the internet and sharing and oversharing.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't come across one of these in the wild, as it were. I've always I've always come to them knowing it was a creepypasta.
Yes.
I'll never get used to saying that out loud.
I know. Do you have any other sort of personal favourites in terms of like these creepypasta stories that you think people should seek out and read?
I think there's one in particular that's super short called the Bad Dream.
Yes.
What did you think about that one?
I loved it. There are it reminded me of those, there are things that people share that are like creepy things that children say.
Yeah.
You know, it's that, isn't it? And often
Yes.
those are just like 1 or 2 lines long.
Yeah.
They're great. I love that kind of stuff.
So that one I really liked. There's one for all you gorehounds out there that is called The Russian Sleep Experiment.
Oh yeah, that was horrific.
Yeah, I agree.
That was like a torture porn version of a creepypasta.
Yeah, it was really, really horrible. It was like the orgy scene in Event Horizon.
Yes.
But writ large.
Yes, exactly.
And then there was, I mean, there's all sorts out there. Some are better than others. Some of the ones that are purported to be good are, as a connoisseur, I don't think are good.
Mm-hmm.
They're popular, but that's the same in any genre, right? It's like, you can look at the popular horror movies and go like,
yes,
not into it.
Yes.
But there are some great ones out there, and there's some good curated lists out there as well that we could maybe share.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We'll share some stuff around, absolutely. And what's really nice about it as well is that they're quite all just easy. They're quite short.
Yeah.
They're just easily digestible, all of them, aren't they? That's the thing.
Yeah.
You could read them on your phone on the bus if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Although, like you say, it's quite nice to read them in a dark room, I think, with some creepy music on in the background.
That was my homework instructions.
You did. You even sent me a link to what music to listen to. It was so good. I obeyed every rule, and I just sat there and went, right, let's do this. Yeah, it was so good.
The bleakest thing I could think of.
My girlfriend was in bed asleep next to me, and I was sat in the dark with just like this laptop light shining on my face.
Oh my god, you didn't read The Bad Dream in bed with her next to you, did you?
And I had these massive headphones on, and just sat there like for an hour and a half, and then I watched all of what we're about to talk about as well. I probably had some quite fucked up dreams after that, but
I can imagine
it was worth it. It was great. So
why do we do this to ourselves?
I know,
Mike?
it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is so weird. I am constantly looking for the next thing that will make me feel really fucking uneasy.
Yeah.
What? I don't know why.
One of the times I felt most uneasy as a result of this podcast was Whistle and I'll Come to You.
Oh my god, yeah.
Right? The end of that thing, and I was just like, what? How is that so affecting?
I know.
But it's great that it can come from anywhere.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. So that's very much kind of the written word variety in terms of online horror stuff. And then the other thing that we're gonna cover now is this is. Like we said, it's thought of really now as a web series, isn't it? Essentially, so this is Marble Hornets. So again, we won't spoil too much of this, but let's give us a little bit of info of the general kind of premise of what this is.
Plot synopsis, or I'll give you some context as well.
Yeah, and also what it is, what the form is.
So Marble Hornets is a YouTube channel, and it's from the early days of YouTube. So like I was watching it when it was happening,
right?
And it was in 2009, I think. So this is when, if you go back and watch it, and you all should, the videos are 4:3 because aspect ratio, because that's the only format that you could upload to YouTube. So it's 4:3 videos, and it was uploaded onto a YouTube channel with kind of no fanfare, no one talking about it, and people just sort of found it themselves. And I don't understand how like it got discovered originally. That's lost to time.
What a great way though to have been discovered.
And there are videos uploaded every week. So Jay is the main protagonist, but he doesn't really ever announce himself.
Yes.
And he went to college with this guy Alex, and Alex was working on a film called Marble Hornets. And now Alex has been behaving erratically and like doing strange things, and is leaving town because of whatever. And he's said to Jay, look, here's all my film, here's all my tapes, like do with them what you want. Because Jay's like, oh, I heard you were making a film, it's a real shame that it's not going to be finished. And he's like, fine, here's all my rushes. And so he just gives him all of his tapes, and there's hundreds and hundreds of hours. And so Jay has said like, I started to go through these tapes, and I started to see some weird things, and like there's loads of tapes to go through. So as I find stuff, I'm just going to upload it to this channel and share it with you, and see if we can figure out together like what's going on. And he delivers all of this not as a vlogger. He delivers it like with basic editing software on a black screen with white text. which I think is a super interesting creative
Yeah,
choice.
and I really, I loved about it as well is that it didn't have that annoying found footage trope of like the narrator has to like talk through everything.
Yeah.
There's barely any talking. Like it's that in that regard, it feels very real because the guy filming is not going, I'm really scared because I've just seen this. It's just like you just watch it happen.
It's so exactly, and it's very naturalistic, and so. As you know, things go awry, but as the episodes go on, you start to realize that you're not watching things in chronological order. You're watching things in the way that Jay has discovered these tapes.
Yes.
And he starts to try and help you piece things together himself. And it does my favorite thing of like whatever we're calling frame analysis horror. Right. It's my favorite thing of like you'll watch a few videos, and I remember at the time watching them as they came out going, okay, what is this thing?
Yes, sometimes it just looks like a video of nothing.
Yeah, it's just like, it's outtakes from like this bad movie they're making.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
It looks dreadful, the movie they're making. And it's just like someone's in the front of a car talking, and you're just shooting it, and the director's like asking for take after take, and then all of a sudden he's like, we've got to go. And then it ends. And when I first watched that video, which is like episode 6 or something, it's near the beginning, I was like, okay, that's weird. And it was only later when I went back and started to look at the frame, I started to see the things that were there. The same as all of those amazing, like Lake Mungo, all those great
I love it.
frame analysis horrors.
I agree 100%. That is one of my favourite types of horror as well.
And it's so this was a YouTube channel, and it was just uploading week after week. They turned the comments off.
They did. I noticed that.
So there's no one's allowed to come in and go, oh, this is fake, I went to school with this guy, blah blah blah. So there's no way of breaking it. Breaking the what would you call it, like the artifice. But also there's no way of verifying is this fiction, because this is like some guys who are at school or whatever making it.
Totally unglamorous, like you say, unshowy. There's nothing about it that could suggest artifice in some ways in the way that these guys look and talk and film stuff.
And actually, like the fact that they are making this bad film which has got bad acting in it, the counterpoint of that is like the rest of the performances feel super naturalistic.
yes, you're right.
And so then that almost like throws into, because you can see what bad acting looks like because it's in the frame as well, you're like, well, maybe this is real. Like obviously it's not, right? Spoiler alert, it's not real. But at the time when I was watching it, I was like, this isn't real. I'm sure it's not real. But then I'd be like on Google, like Marble Hornets, no one was talking about it. No one was claiming the authorship of it.
Now that is scary. That is like, if you're discovering it at the time and no one is talking about it, that would freak me out.
But people are talking about it, but everyone's talking about what is the deal with this. Like, do you know what this is? And each video uploaded can be 30 seconds long, or it could be 7 minutes long. It's not like an episode of television.
No.
And you don't know what you're going to get. And some of them are really boring. Some of them are like exposition. And some of them are really, really terrifying.
Yes. And it's interesting, like you sent me an article, a good article about it, and they were talking about the kind of 3 types of scares that you get in this, and they said, there is that kind of frame analysis scare where you'll go back and watch a video a second time and you'll notice something you didn't see first time in the background or something, the kind of real chilling stuff. There are some episodes, quote unquote episodes, whatever you call them, that do have proper jump scares as well. And then there are these other things where it's like they're suggesting something scary is happening by the way that the film grain itself is getting distorted and the audio.
And exactly. And then like when you first start watching it, it just looks like the film's gone wrong. But when you understand that film goes wrong when this presence, this thing is near you, then just even the briefest bit of static is enough to send like the hairs on the back of mine are going up now. The hairs on the back of your neck like up.
I really did find myself getting like, oh god, when is it going to show me something horrible? You know,
Yeah.
every time something like that happened, and for every new video I'd start, and I'd just be like, oh god, you know what? Where am I now? When did this take place?
Yeah,
What's
and there's
about to
no
happen?
music.
No music.
There's not. It's not constructed in any way. Like, and so I told you to watch. I think everybody should watch it with headphones.
Yep.
On a laptop.
Yep.
On a YouTube page. Individual YouTube videos
Exactly.
on a YouTube page in the dark.
Yeah. Do you know the worst part about it is that these big noisy ads come in between
Yeah.
each entry.
Yeah.
I really could have done without seeing an advert for Wix or Squarespace in
Oh, yeah,
between these
sure.
entries. But I suppose that again makes it feel all the more genuine. That's
Yeah,
the
because
thing.
then it feels like someone's uploading it to
YouTube. Because
and
again,
it's
like you
there.
said, the point of it as well is that it's supposed to feel like that. I don't think this transferred into a film in the way that it looks would work. I
No.
don't think as a TV show either it would work. It has to be a random 30-second YouTube video.
And you've called it a web series, and like the way I presented it to you was, but at the time it was something called ARG.
Ooh, yeah.
Alternative reality game or whatever it is.
Yes.
And the thing about it when it was happening live is Marble Hornets had a Twitter.
Right.
And they were tweeting, "Oh, I found some more tapes."
Ah, brilliant.
Just in the week.
Yeah.
Like in between uploads.
Yeah.
And then halfway through the series, a new YouTube channel starts called To the Ark, which I didn't send you because it was confusing to try and like figure it out. And it's super abstract, like images and shapes and text that don't mean anything.
Right.
That were uploaded in between videos that were used to taunt Jay, the protagonist.
Ah, okay, because we got one of those in the
Yeah.
series I watched in the playlist you sent me.
I think I put one in just to show what they were, because there's lots of them, and it's you don't need them all because you get the sense of it.
Yeah.
But that was a whole channel that's being operated by somebody else who knows about this situation and is taunting Jay. Now, who is that person?
Oh my god! So what I will ask is, so you sent me you said like, here's a good place to start, and you very kindly like basically made me a playlist.
Yeah.
Which again we should share with.
We'll
people,
share let's share the playlist
because it had about the first 20 episodes.
That's quote unquote season 1.
Season 1, and it's about, like you said, it's about a film length altogether. If you watch all of these videos back to back, it's about an hour and a half, isn't it? And it was great, and it really it freaked me out, and also it ended in a way where I was like, oh shit, well now I need to keep watching. How long does it go on for? How many episodes are there, and is it satisfying eventually?
So interesting questions. So there are 3 quote unquote seasons,
right?
There are more characters that get introduced, and I think all in all, it's about 9 hours.
Wow, okay.
In total.
Yeah.
It starts to get longer. Like any second season and third season, it starts to get a bit more self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Having said that, some of the scariest stuff happens later on when you're in it. Because I think like once you've been in this world...
Yes.
And you understand the rules of this world, you can then jump to some of the videos of season 2 and season 3, and they will be utterly terrifying individual experiences.
Yes. Well, I did watch one that was on the article you sent me. Somebody wrote about one of their favourite
The one in the
episodes.
tunnel.
The tunnel. So it was like an old abandoned hospital, and then
Of course it was.
The character crawls down into a tunnel in a basement. And again, it's one of those awful, claustrophobic, it's like the end of Borderlands or the end of Blair Witch even, you know, and that kind of horrible... just stop crawling through this tunnel, like getting deeper and deeper. Yeah.
What are you doing? Yeah, and so things like that I think are brilliant. And, you know, it gets a bit protracted and it gets a bit convoluted and whatever. But I still think, like, to have created something that can have this effect on me is brilliant, considering that like all these amateur people at the time. Like, I genuinely think it's a great piece of work, and I would love to give it more... You know, it's not like nobody knows about it. Like millions of people have watched it.
Yes,
but but I don't feel like it comes up often in conversations.
I've got to admit, I'd never heard of it. Yeah, it's amazing, and it is a real it is a really impressive piece of work because it's done so well, and like you say, that it plays by its rules. It very much knows the medium it's telling this story in, and also you're deliberately watching it in a way that this protagonist has assembled it for you, and he explains why he's assembled it in this way and everything. So all of it works in terms of its consistency, and it's bloody scary as well. Yeah. So I mean, it does the trick, doesn't it?
It's got everything for me, and I feel like I hope in Evolution of Horror series 28 when whoever's taken over from like Our Dead Corpses, they're going back. I hope they have the same feeling about Marble Hornets as we have about Whistle and I'll Come to You.
Exactly.
You'll go back and you'll go, oh, what's this quaint thing? Oh, I remember the internet used to be scary.
Yeah.
And then they'll look at this and they'll go, bloody hell.
Oh my god. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Yeah. It's wonderful. And then so this is gonna work as a little segue here, because I want to ask you, without spoiling too much, the monster itself in Marble Hornets. This is like a very, again, I've only watched some of it, and I haven't had it explained to me, but it looks to me like the Slender Man. Yeah, it's a very, very tall man in a suit with a kind of blurred no face that pops up in places. Yeah, is this a series about Slender Man? So yes. They call him the Operator. Yes, this is because this is what I read, and I was like, okay, it's not Slender Man. Yeah. It's part of something called the Slenderverse. So we're not going to go into it, right? Yeah. And I think Marble Hornets actually exists sort of on its own and became like, this is the great thing that we haven't talked about. Yeah. The internet is the idea that, if you're a filmmaker or an author, you create a piece of work and then you own that IP, and then you can sell the rights and allow other people to exploit it in whatever way that you choose. Yeah. Because of the way Tim Berners-Lee set up the internet, like, this is for everyone. Yes. The people who created Slender Man or created these creepypastas put them on the internet for all of us. Yeah. They put it on there under Creative Commons. That's their. Yeah. So this becomes a folkloric character because it doesn't belong to any one person. It's not like it's not like James Bond, who belongs to Ian Fleming. It's not like any of these iconic characters who were written by one person. Yes, it's kind of rights free almost. Yeah, but it belongs to everyone, and it's like, here's a thing, why don't you tell your story about it? Yeah. And if enough people do that, then it feels like, and this is probably where the trouble started, then it feels like, oh, well, where did this idea come from? Yes. Did it come out of the ether? Yes. Is it real? Did it come from the woods? Yes, it must have started somewhere. Is it there? So that's why, yes, it is Slender Man, but they don't call it Slender Man because, like, why? They don't need to. Why would they? Yeah. Because if you're experiencing it for the first time in the fiction, and you don't know what the Slender Man is, so this could be, not going to call it. This could be the best version of a kind of Slender Man TV show, film type adaptation that you're going to get. Really. I think this is the ultimate audiovisual experience of Slender Man. Well, except for potentially the game. That was where Slender Man really took off on the internet. There's a game, you can still play it now. I think it's called 8 Pages. Okay. Now. Slender 8 Pages or something like that. Yeah. And that is a terrifying game, which, like, you essentially become a person walking around the woods trying to find pages that are like nailed to trees or in tunnels. Oh god. And then the same thing happens, like the static comes, and that's when you have to run, and and it pops up, and so there's hundreds and hundreds of Let's Play videos on YouTube of gamers playing this game and freaking themselves out. Brilliant. Which is super fun to watch as well, but like, you can play the game as well. So I think that's a really great way to experience this story world. Yes. But I would highly recommend Marble Hornets as well, because I feel like it delivers authenticity in a way that it's super hard to replicate anywhere else. Yeah.
And we'll come on to talk about the film, I'm sure.
But this is a terrific...
that was the massive frustration for me.
Well, yes, and again, we'll get back to this, but I think it loops back to what we were saying at the beginning, is I just... Can this kind of thing work at all in cinema? I think, does it just have to be in this format? A character like Slender Man belongs in these grainy YouTube videos where you don't know where they come from.
So Slender Man didn't begin in video. It began as a challenge.
Yes.
Like on the Something Awful forums. It was like, show me something scary.
Yeah.
And someone found, like, they doctored an old picture of a playground with what we now know to be the Slender Man in the background.
Yes,
and someone was
horrible
like,
picture,
creepy, and that's in the film.
It is in the film. Yes.
And then like with this Creative Commons thing, someone said, "Oh yeah, I found a photo that had him in it," and they upload their photo, and it's like, "Oh, this library burned down, and this was the only photo that they found," and people start to layer evidence, quote unquote evidence, and layer additional story beats into this, because it's a non-linear story, you can come in at Marble Hornets and then go back and find the photos, or you can come in at the photos and go to Marble Hornets, or go to one of the other Slenderverse like web series that are out there that all start to cross over. And there were a couple that started independently and then like contacted each other in the fiction of like, "Oh, I see you've got a YouTube channel. I've got one too. You've been seeing some weird things, so have I." And then there was a crossover event, like between these amateur uploaders.
Brilliant.
Sorry, I'm getting very passionate about it.
No, I love it. I love it. It's great. So that's how it started life then. So it basically was like a random photograph.
Yeah.
This tall man with no face. He always wears a suit, doesn't he?
Yeah, he wears. Yeah, so he wears. Well, we haven't described Slender Man. People don't know what Slender Man is.
Exactly.
Yeah, so he's a tall man, pale.
Yeah.
With no face, bald, with white face. Tall at like probably like 7-8 foot.
Yes.
Long arms.
Yes.
Usually.
Yes.
Sometimes weirdly got like tentacles.
Yes.
Sometimes not. I think scarier without tentacles personally.
Yeah, definitely.
And does the best kind of like zombie thing where you'll sort of look and it'll be in the distance out of the corner of your eye, you'll turn away and you'll turn back and it'll be right there. That kind of thing. You don't like, he moves in an unnatural way and you can't see him and all that good stuff.
Yes.
And there's something strange about someone in like formal attire in a wood.
Definitely.
That already puts you on edge.
Yes, it's out of place. Again, it's uncanny. It really is. And again, there's something about those kind of still photographs are always scary, I think, as well.
My favourite ones are the ones where you're like, here's a Slender Man photograph, and you're like, is it?
Yeah, where is it?
Where is it? It's like, where's Wally?
And again, it's like that frame analysis we were talking
and then
about.
when you see it, you're like,
holy shit, exactly. And I'm always a sucker for anything like that. You know, did you ever watch Andy Nyman's Ghost Stories play in the West End? So do you remember at the beginning he tells the story about the family photo and he zooms in and zooms in?
Yes.
Do you remember that? Yeah. I won't give it away, but that for me was probably the most chilling moment of the whole play. That kind of thing absolutely gets me. And that is Slender Man. Basically,
there was that bit and the bit where I smelled bleach.
Yes, amazing. Yeah. So it started life like that, and again, I think as with a lot of these internet things, there's this. No one quite knew what was real or whether it was real. I get people probably but it kind of spread, didn't it? Yeah.
And like at its worst, it's a meme.
Yes.
Yeah, but at its at its best, it's a meme maybe, and at its worst. If you're an impressionable young person who shouldn't be on the internet, you're seeing these things. Like for you and I, we love that uncanny. We love that we've suspended our disbelief. Yeah. And we love that sense of like, oh, I don't know if it's real or not. I know it's not real, but like, oh, I'm gonna make myself think like maybe it could be real. Yeah. But if you're a young person, you don't have that facility in your brain yet. Yeah. You don't have that capability of being able to understand the difference. Yeah. And then like we can't talk about Slender Man without mentioning like this kind of horrendous
real life crime,
real world thing that happened.
The heartbreaking and horrifying new evidence in a case we've been following for months. For the first time, we're hearing those interrogation tapes, 12-year-old girls calmly describing why they lured one of their best friends into the woods, stabbing her 19 times and leaving her to die. All of it, they say, for Slender Man.
Yeah, so, we should probably talk about this. I'm sure most people out there have already heard about it. There was a kind of real-life crime, a really brutal, horrific thing that happened linked to this myth of the Slender Man.
Yeah, so in 2014 in Wisconsin, there were two girls called Anissa Ware and Morgan Geyser, I think. And they basically lured their friend, who was called Peyton, into the woods and then stabbed her 19 times because they wanted to appease the Slender Man. They wanted to become his acolytes so that he would leave their families alone. And that was what they said.
Yeah.
And I think I'm right in saying, earlier this year, that the trial finally ended and they were both committed under mental health precautions. They were both committed as, under insanity or something like that. Because, this is a horrendous thing that happened.
Yeah. Totally. There's a documentary about it, actually. There's an HBO documentary. I think it's called Beware the Slender Man.
Wire and Geyser are accused of stabbing the friend and leaving her for dead.
Police say the suspects were inspired by a character on a website.
Slender Man, a faceless ghoul.
We never thought she could possibly believe that it was real.
Yeah, I started watching that documentary and then I just got a bit frustrated. It was taking a point of view that was it was blaming the internet.
Yes, absolutely it was, yes.
And then after the first half hour, it suddenly turned into just, it was like watching an Adam Curtis film of just random weird stuff from the internet.
Yeah. Exactly. It's true. Yeah, it's totally true.
And it suddenly abandons narrative.
Yeah.
And just starts putting these weird things from the internet up one after the other. And I'm like, what point are you trying to prove?
No, it's true.
What are you trying to say here?
And it's not the first time, this is something in horror cinema history that's happened a lot, hasn't it? The James Bulger stuff with the Child's Play movie in the early 90s. I mean, I don't know. What's your opinion on this kind of thing without us getting too deep into it? But
I mean, I can't sum it up better than Skeet Ulrich in Scream. Scary movies don't create killers; they just make them more creative.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
exactly.
And I think that's I think that's true.
Yeah,
I think Wes Craven's right.
Yeah,
and he's probably borne a brunt of a lot of this criticism. Over the years for all the stuff that he's made.
Yes,
but I think that's true. I don't think you can blame the horror movies. Plenty of people watch them and don't do stuff. I mean,
Definitely.
I don't want to get into COD psychology or anything like that, and I'm not a professional able to give opinions.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do horrible things, I don't think that it's...
Yes, I think you're going to do horrible things.
You're going to do horrible things.
I agree with that.
And it's the same as plenty of people play violent video games.
Yeah.
And then something happens and they find... they've got a PS4.
Yeah,
and
they've been playing GTA 3.
Yeah, it was definitely the video games that did it. No, it's the fact that they're mentally ill that made them do these things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is interesting, and there is a slight difference between blaming just movies that are pretty much unrelated, like one about a Chucky doll, to. Again, the internet, like we said, there is that danger with the internet, and that's the point that the HBO documentary is hammering in too much. But that I suppose, like we mentioned at the very beginning, that I suppose you've got to be careful that young people could access literally anything, couldn't they? At the click of a button.
For sure. Right, and they shouldn't have unfettered access to the internet.
Exactly.
Right,
exactly. That's not the internet's fault.
That's not the internet's fault.
No.
It's like. Don't give them access to the cooker.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Don't hand them a gun.
Until they're old enough.
Yeah.
Right? Until they know what they're doing. It's exactly the same thing. And I think, actually, the next generation who've grown up knowing this will be much better.
Yes.
Because they'll understand it.
I think
in a way that, the current parents don't, or the previous, parents didn't understand it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's true.
The other part of this as well is it's not it often becomes the furore that gets whipped up by the media afterwards that then retrospectively blames the fiction,
the art,
the film,
the whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. And and then in a really kind of in a really kind of dark way, this then makes that folk tale even more dark and scary, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing. The Slender Man now has got that much more kind of danger around it in a sense that this real thing has actually happened as well, you know.
So, but you know what? Like when I watched Candyman for the first time because of this podcast.
Oh my God, what did you think?
I loved it.
Yeah, masterpiece.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I still remember being a kid when that came out and being too afraid to say Candyman.
Yes.
Like 5 times in the mirror.
Yep.
I was too scared to do it.
Yep.
I'd never seen the film. I didn't know anything about it, but that was folklore.
Yes.
That was then passed around,
Yep.
and that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's always been there. And I'm sure if you go back, like there were probably books that were banned because, you know, they were said to be sending people hysterical or whatever it was back in the day. Or maybe there was a really like racy tapestry once that was like locked away or something, you know. I'm sure there's always been, like you say, art that has elicited emotions in people because that's what it's supposed to do.
Yes, exactly. That's what the best art does. Yeah.
I don't know.
So I think we why don't we finish then?
I feel like we've been circling the drain.
Yeah,
and now here we go.
I think let's do it. Let's delve in. Seeing as it's, you know, it's perfect timing. I'm glad in a way that these studios waited until we were covering internet folk horror for them to release the film version of Slender Man. Thanks, guys.
Those who hear the 3 bells toll accept his invitation. When you hear the first, you must close your eyes.
Katie!
Opening your eyes only once you've heard the third.
He gets in your head like a virus. Some he takes, some he drives mad. Once you see him, you can't unsee him.
So, Slender Man brackets 2018.
Yes.
So there are 4 girls. Actually, one of the things I like about this film is that it feels like a horror film made for teenage girls, starring teenage girls.
I agree.
And that was one of the things I actually thought was good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll go back to the plot.
Yeah.
4 girls, and they're at high school, and they're all mates, and they're kind of like archetypes.
Yeah.
There's like the jock and the kind of like alt one, and
the kind of shy, nervous
one, and then there's like the one whose dad is dead, and like, everyone's got a thing. And they are having a sleepover, and all the boys are having a sleepover at their house, and they're like to the boys, "What are you doing on Friday night?" "Oh, we're going to summon the Slender Man." And so then the girls go, "Oh, the boys are Slender, we should do it too." And so they go on the internet and summon the Slender Man, and like things happen after that.
They do, exactly. So this movie, I think has got something like 7% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics.
It's gone down.
It's gone down. It's got about 20% from audiences, 7% from critics.
Okay.
It's safe to say it's rotten in terms of Rotten Tomatoes. It seems to have been universally sort of hated. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with that sentiment?
Listen, I don't think it's that bad. I think there is some definite movie critic snobbery going on, and certainly there is some men of a certain age snobbery going on. So I will tell you the story of when I went to see this film.
Yeah,
it was in Leicester Square.
Yeah,
at like 9:30 on a Saturday night. And I booked a ticket and I sat down. It's a very nice seat. And these 2 girls came in after me. It was like, you know, obviously the film wasn't doing very well. I think it was the only showing on in London, and it was there were maybe like 25 people there.
Yes.
But 25 people is enough to get a bit of an atmos. And these 2 girls came past me, and they were giggly and they were on their phones. And then one came to me and was like, "Just to let you know, I might scream." And I was like, that's fine. I would like that.
Yeah.
And they were properly into it.
There you go.
And they loved it like a roller coaster, like a thrill ride. And they were screaming in the right places, and they were cowering in the right places.
I'm so glad that you said this, because I literally had to go on radio and say this because I got asked very nicely to go and talk on Radio 4 about it. So I was like, yeah, brilliant. I hadn't seen the film yet, so I had to go see the only showing I could go to. Again, it was the only one in London. It was like 11 in the morning somewhere in northwest London. It's like an hour's trip across London for me. And I was the only person in the entire cinema.
I mean, that's
sat
spooky
there
in itself.
11 in the morning on a Friday watching it. And I won't lie, I had very low expectations. I thought this is going to be a pile of shit. And it wasn't good, but I said the exact same thing. I said, look, this isn't meant for me. And I thought when watching it, teenage girls are gonna like this, and that's totally fine, and it is, last week I watched The Nun, and The Nun annoyed me much more than Slender Man did, because maybe I thought it should have been better or something. I don't know, but it takes itself so seriously. It's so po-faced, and also it's just every kind of generic trick in the book. I found myself getting more angry at The Nun than I did at Slender Man, because I thought, well, okay, this is not necessarily what I would have wanted from a scary Slender Man movie, but I think it will be perfectly fine as, like you say, teenage girls at a sleepover.
Yeah, having immersed myself in this world and being familiar with the quote unquote property of Slender Man.
Yes.
Like, there were things in that critics won't have picked up on.
Right.
Like, when they're searching, the page where they find the video looks like the creepypasta wikia.
Ah, interesting. Okay,
so it's the same colours.
Okay.
It's the same colour scheme. So if you've ever been on creepypasta wikia, you'll be like, oh,
you'll recognise that.
I know. Well, and they use some of the real photos from some of the famous Slender Man photos.
Well, and they were my favourite bits, when you'd see the photos. But that's what I was going to ask you, because it didn't seem to me like it was really, the fact that it's this story about these teenage girls, and I won't spoil anything, but one of them goes missing, and I thought, is this in some way going to reference the real crimes that happened in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
And it kind of, and it doesn't, but it
not
kind
directly.
Of almost suggests like it's going to.
Yeah, and like, not to go too spoilery, but towards the end there are more suggestions of that kind of thing.
Yes, and there is a moment when three of them go into the woods at night together, and then one of them disappears. But and it kind of skirts around it, but it doesn't. And I wondered how much, from your perspective, it did draw on the actual mythology and lore of Slender Man.
So I hadn't really thought about it until this moment, but actually, it's doing the same thing as every other Slender Man story has done. It has built its own version.
Right, exactly.
Of how Slender Man works. And it does, this is what annoyed me about the film, is like it sets up some rules, and I was like, oh, okay, you're going to set up some rules, and then it just completely ignores them.
Yes.
There's this video you watch, which is like, the whole thing is like silly, because like you can just Google and watch a video, and then otherwise
you've summoned Slender Man.
Suddenly Slender Man's everywhere, right? Otherwise, like, why is he not in 40% of houses? But anyway,
it's like the problem with if you put the Ring videotape on YouTube. That's like, okay, well, everyone in the world is fucked, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe that's what someone did.
Yes,
maybe that's why we got to where we are. But anyway, the thing that annoyed me about it was like that it took the time and energy. And like, I'm a literate horror viewer. It took the time and energy to set up some story rules.
Yes.
It was like, don't open your eyes during this thing, and don't talk during this thing, and listen for the third bell, and like, that's fine. And then one of the characters explicitly breaks those rules, and there are no consequences to her breaking the rules. And I was like, this is annoying.
Yes.
Like, if you're setting it up, follow through on what the story decisions you've made.
Yeah.
And like the three bells thing, like, they were creepy bells.
Yep.
But
what there's no more to it than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What does it mean? Like, what's that it just felt like someone had gone on and been like, oh, I can make a Slender Man story.
Yeah,
easy.
totally.
Close your eyes, three bells, done.
Yeah, it's like one of those classic kind of, it's been made by a studio committee more than somebody who really knew much about or cared much about telling a scary story.
Yeah, so I mean, who knows? Maybe there's a great cut of the Slender Man out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a script that's better than the final version. But like, there were things about like basic structure that frustrated me, and then there were just the ways they treated the monster.
Yeah, it's not good. That's not good, and it is. Again, I wonder whether this just is, like we said earlier. I just think maybe this just isn't meant for a film. This kind of character. Maybe what makes it so scary is that you're looking at it on a grainy picture on Google. I
don't know, like the Blair Witch. You don't see anything. You don't need to see anything.
Yes. But does that gimmick work over and over? I don't know. Because
you're right. The Blair Witch Project exists, right?
The Blair Witch Project was a groundbreaking phenomenon, and it already
exists.
No
so don't try and remake it. But you could show 90% less of that monster.
Yes,
and it would be 90% scarier.
Yes. Should it have been a found footage movie? That's what I keep thinking. I thought surely this is fodder for a teenage girls on their mobile phones in the woods story. Again, I just felt like it was very glossy for something that shouldn't be
and
glossy.
Maybe that's the problem. It's like as soon as you put it into high definition,
yes, exactly,
and high resolution,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
like, and because there's like close-ups of like, like I don't mind, like if we're gonna spoil it, let's spoil it.
Yeah,
but, like there's close-ups of the face and things, and it's just like, oh, like now. Like, what is it? Like, I'm trying to guess what material that face is made of. And, like, actually, it's better when it's blurry and in the background. And, like, is it even a face? Like, is it even corporeal?
Yes, definitely.
Like, do we know?
Definitely. And also, I feel like, I don't know what happened in the second half, but I feel like it really just runs out of steam. And I think, like, all I remember in the second half, and again, we're not really spoiling it. We're kind of minor spoilers, I suppose. But it just feels like they've run out of story by about midway through, and so they just have to throw loads of scary dream sequences where like somebody's in the woods and then they wake up and then they're fine, but then they're in a scary situation and then they're in a hospital bed and then they're and it's just like we'll just throw in a bunch of like jumpy set pieces.
Yeah,
with the
and
Slender
it was,
Man popping out.
and then they were like, and now we're gonna like, oh look, aren't we cool? We're referencing Poltergeist. I'm like, that's
no,
Don't
exactly,
do that.
Yeah.
But listen, there are a couple of things in it as well that I thought this is what frustrates me even more. Is there are glimmers
of something
really
good.
great, like the video call.
Yes,
I thought that was a really great conceit.
Yes,
done very well.
Yes,
and again felt like of the internet.
Yep,
like something's in the pipes, something's in the wires.
Definitely,
it reminds me of this old movie called Pulse.
Yeah,
the
J horror Pulse.
No, it's like an American film called Pulse.
Okay.
And again, I think I watched it quite young, and it's about like home automation. And there's a horrible scene where so it's an AI basically that's taken over this house, and there's a horrible scene where this woman gets locked in her shower, and the AI turns the water up to scalding temperature and like burns her.
Ooh, yeah.
And spoilers for Pulse, 1980, whatever. But there's something in the pipes.
Yes.
There's something in the pipes. We're about to go.
Pipes, yeah.
But there's something in the wires. There's something there, and like that's what I loved about that video call. And I thought that was a really interesting conceit, but like too little, too late.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's all about using that medium. I think that's the thing. Like you say, the moments that were great, where you see photographs or when you get internet video calls, when they go on the website.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what works with it, and that's why I think it needs to stay where it is in a way. I think, that could... And in some ways, you could forget that the Slender Man is a thing and just watch that film as just a teen monster movie. And I'm sure there probably are now a generation of teenagers who might not really know much about Slender Man and might just come to this just because it's a scary teen movie about teenage girls. No, well, maybe they won't. I don't know. I
don't think they will. I mean, it feels a bit... It sniffs a bit like a cash-in.
Yeah, it does.
What do teenage people are scared of? The Slender Man. Let's make a film.
Exactly. But like you said, if it's working for teenagers, then fine.
Yeah, you're right. There are things that are commendable about it. Like there are girl protagonists.
Yes.
Who are not. Don't need to be saved by boys.
Yes,
they are
not just girlfriends.
No, in fact, quite the opposite. Like the boys come in and out and then disappear, and they're barely there, and they're sort of like flitting in and out, and they're only there to further the stories of the women, and then they disappear again.
Yes, exactly.
And like that's fresh. That's like sadly still in 2018. That still feels fresh. So I know it's a shame. Like I gave you my 3-word review, which was a wasted opportunity.
Exactly, a wasted opportunity, and that sometimes can be more frustrating than just a straight up bad movie. A movie that has so much potential and it is not fulfilled. What do you think the future of Slender Man is? I mean, are we going to get anything? Is anyone going to have a go at it, or is that the nail in the coffin in terms of Slender Man movies, works of art?
I think for now it's probably going to be nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like millennial nostalgia. That's a big thing on the internet now. It's like people, like millennials and people who were born in the early 80s and late 80s. I've now got old enough to be able to have nostalgia about being a teenager or growing up with the internet. And so they're going to have nostalgia for this thing from 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I think that's probably where it's going to be most effective.
Yes.
And actually we should be thinking like, what's the next thing?
What's the
next thing that's going to like creep us out and that we're not going to know if it's real or not?
I know.
Like like in 2009 this was good.
Yeah.
And Blair Witch had done it in 1999.
Yeah.
So next
what's
year.
Next? I know.
Next year
very
would do
exciting.
something.
Any ideas? As somebody who you spend a lot of time on the internet, anything? What do you think the next? Is there a next Slender Man type thing? Another Marble Hornets type thing? Is there anything that's been on your radar that is new and fresh and exciting in the horror world? I mean,
I'm always excited to see what happens, like, and where it might come from.
Yeah.
And I'm super open to, this Channel Zero. It's like half-hour, 6 half hours. Like, great.
Exactly.
That's like when American Horror Story first came out, I loved it.
Me too.
And it was great. And it was like properly, like someone who loved horror was making it and being given the budgets to do something great. And actually the promos for the new season, which starts like imminently.
Oh, yes. And this is where they're
Horror
kind
Story
of mashing
Apocalypse.
up.
They're mashing up Murder House and Coven.
Interesting.
And it's also got added Joan Collins.
Why not?
So why not? Like, it's proper. It's like
brilliant.
the highest camp.
Yes,
now.
that is what is brilliant about Ryan Murphy and these programs, is that they are horrific, but they are as camp as you could possibly get.
And
American
you know
Horror
what?
Story.
Like, it's round that corner of the spectrum. Where high horror turns into high camp, and
definitely.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
great.
Absolutely, embrace it. Okay, so we've mentioned a lot of titles and a lot of things. For somebody who, like me, had not discovered a lot of this stuff, where would you recommend somebody starting? What would you recommend to them? If you had to recommend one thing, one video, story, whatever.
So if you've got less than 1 minute,
yes,
you should read The Bad Dream.
Yeah.
If you've got less than 5 minutes, you should read Candle Cove. And if you've got an hour and a half and you want to try something different, you should watch that first season of Marble Hornets.
Excellent recommendation.
That would be my suggestion. It's like, if you've got like 90-minute slot, there's a good horror movie slot. If you're thinking about it, go to the playlist.
Yeah, and I would say, like you said earlier, Alex, I sit in the dark with the lights out, sit on your laptop and
watch it on your laptop with headphones on,
with the volume up nice and loud. I think that's where you're going to get the right experience. It definitely creeped me out. Amazing. Alex, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
It's been so much fun. It's been really interesting. Now, a couple of questions I just ask everyone. What's your favourite horror movie?
I'm dreading these questions. So
it's impossible to answer.
Right? I know. Can I hark back to earlier in the podcast? I can't remember who it was, but they said like their Mount Rushmore of horror.
Yeah, go. Please do.
Can I do that?
Oh yeah, I like this. Go on. Yeah.
Can I do that? So, I'll go in the order they were released, because I have been thinking about this, but I couldn't narrow it down to one.
All right.
So, The Thing.
Of course. Yeah.
I just love it so much, so much.
Perfect movie.
Yeah. I mean, top 5 movies of all time.
Yes.
Not least horror.
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I talked about, which like is very dear to my heart for the reasons I talked about it, but also I just think is astonishing.
It's a phenomenal film.
Oh, it's just everything about it, and it's so funny.
Yeah.
Farewell to Arms.
Yeah, funny, but also quite creepy in places as well.
Yeah,
I used to, when I was a kid, I used to get really scared by the witch, and I used to get scared by the laughing
moose head.
Yes,
exactly that.
Yeah.
Scream.
Oh yeah, good choice.
I love Scream.
Yeah.
So I was working at the cinema when Scream came out.
Oh.
And so I got
perfect place to be working. Yeah.
I know, and I got to watch it a lot.
Amazing.
And it was. Oh, it's just, I love it. So I defy you to find a better opening of a horror movie.
No, it doesn't exist. Yeah,
it just, like, it sets everything up, but it's also horrifying. And it's so, that last bit where she's trying to scream for her mum.
Yeah.
is so affecting.
Yeah, it's just so brilliant, that film. What is wonderful about it is that it is this kind of wry comedy as well. Yeah. But also at moments like that opening scene, it just takes itself so serious. Yeah. It is proper horror as well. It is really, truly brutal, violent, gory, scary horror. It's got everything.
So much time for that film. Yeah. I love it so much. And the fourth, if you're on Mount Rushmore, my fourth one will be The Blair Witch Project.
Nice. Very nice. You're a real 80s and 90s man. Then.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, apparently so. And I think, that film, I still think about it.
Yeah.
I still think you tweeted out the picture of, is it Mike who's standing in the corner?
Yeah.
I still think about that.
Yeah.
That image. I still think about Heather's screams.
Yeah.
And I hear them and I just... it's visceral, and I haven't watched it recently. And after listening to the podcast, maybe I won't.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I want to
gone through the whole thing.
Yeah, but I don't know whether I want to preserve the way that I know I feel about it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is more than any other horror film. I think it's so much about the first time you watch Blair Witch as well, and your memory of it, and that recurring feeling when you think about it.
Yeah, and I was there, and I kind of figured out it probably wasn't real, but there were lots of talk at the time of
Brilliant.
Is it real? Is it not real? The website. And
so you weren't sort of 100% sure.
No, but again, I don't know whether I was
wanting
to, or kidding myself, or deliberately doing that. And at the time, I wasn't even in storytelling. I was doing a chemistry degree, so I was a proper scientist. So there was this whole other lens through which to
amazing
analysis to look at.
Amazing. And then only other question I was going to ask you was, what's your scariest movie? But is it going to be one of those four? Is it one of your
I thought it would be easy to say one of those four, but actually I think the truth is Paranormal Activity.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah.
So I am a sucker for found footage. That film sticks by the rules.
It really does.
That sticks by the rules, and when found footage works best, like Borderlands as well, I watched recently that I loved.
Fucking hell,
when
film.
Nothing happens.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. What was that? Stop.
Yeah. I know.
And then we're back to the daytime, blah blah blah. Yeah. And then nothing happens. And then all the time lapses in that film.
Yeah.
Everything about it. So I went to, I can't remember even why, I got invited to a screening of it.
Of Paranormal Activity.
In Soho Theatre somewhere, underground, with a whole load of sniffy industry professional types. And normally at those things, everyone's sort of fine, whatever, chat, had a drink, blah, blah, blah. It was silent.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like...
Yeah. I know.
And then, honestly, for the next 4 nights, I couldn't sleep. Every cupboard open or ajar.
Yeah.
Anytime the neighbours made a noise, anything, for 4 nights.
Yeah.
And I was just I have to. How am I going to get this out?
Oh my God,
how am I getting this out of my head?
So good.
Really properly affected me.
I think you will love when it eventually gets released. I think it might be coming straight to Netflix, but there was a film at Fright Fest that we kept getting told was the scariest film of the festival and stuff. It's called Terrified, and it's an Argentinian film.
Yeah.
And it is truly kind of that kind of creepy, what goes on in your bedroom at night type scares.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah.
Super into it. Why do we do it to ourselves?
I know, but it's so much fun. Amazing. Alex, thank you very much. Where can people find you if they want to just find you on social media and that kind of thing?
Come and chat to me. I love to chat. I'm in the Facebook group. I love it. Come and talk to us in the Facebook group. It's super fun.
Yes. And share your creepypasta stories and all sorts. Yeah.
Let's do that. That would be great, because I barely scratched the surface, and I'm sure there's other people out there who've got really good examples as well. Otherwise, Twitter's fun. Alex J. Ayling, just come and have a chat. That'd be lovely.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And that's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and a big thank you to my guest for this week, Alex Ayling. Such a pleasure to have him on the podcast, and hopefully he will be back again soon. So what do you think of this week's episode? What do you think of some of these internet folk tales? Have you got any in particular that you'd like to recommend? Anything that I should check out? Please do get in touch. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at EvolutionPod or on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Evolution of Horror. And don't forget, there is also a discussion group. That's the Evolution of Horror discussion group. You can find that on Facebook. Again, that's a great place for us to trade scary stories, reviews of Slender Man, or anything else we might have recently seen. And don't forget, you can find this podcast on all major podcast platforms, including iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Libsyn, and various others. Please do subscribe, please do tell your friends and family about us, and if you get a chance, leave a little rating or review. It helps the podcast get boosted and discovered by new listeners. So, on to next week then. Well, we are very nearly at the end of our journey through the evolution of folk horror. We've now covered most of the elements, from the traditional British stuff to American Southern Gothic to Swedish folklore to Japanese folk horror, Hicksploitation to Witches in the Woods to the recent folk horror revival, and all the way up to internet folklore and Slender Man. So now we're going to start to wrap things up. What we usually do towards the end of every series is we'll do a little Also Rans episode where we can cover a whole bunch of other folk horror recommendations very briefly in spoiler-free detail, movies that we may not have had time to cover in depth. Now there are so many that we wanted to cover this series, so many other folk horrors, that I've actually spread this across 2 weeks. So next week is going to be part 1 of 2. Giles Edwards is going to be joining me, and he is going to be bringing me a list of not 10 but 20 recommendations, and these are going to be movies only released in the 20th century. Not that that massively narrows it down, it's still quite broad, but it won't be anything beyond 1999. And then the week after next, I'll be joined by another guest to recommend a few extra modern folk horrors. So nothing that you'll actually have to prepare or watch in advance of next week. It will be purely spoiler free and a list of recommendations. Join us next week for all of this and more on the evolution.
She